Well, thank you, Jamie. And I'll shift on to our weather discussion here this morning. And let's look first at the last week here in review. And it started off a little cooler than normal for the past week, but as everyone knows and appreciates here, it rapidly became warmer than normal. And so for our week on the far left-hand side here, above normal, warmer than normal, from about 1 or 2 degrees in the far north to as much as 4 or 5 degrees Fahrenheit above normal in the south. The more in and so that's probably isn't surprising. Much of the upper Midwest was the same way. The interesting graphic, and it depends on really on where you are or where precipitation totals here for the past week in the middle panel. They range from less than a quarter of an inch over portions of northern and central lower Michigan. That was where it was relatively dry, to more than 2 inches. The northern part of the state really is where we've seen the most consistent precipitation and actually above normal precipitation for several weeks now. You can see that in yellow there. There also was a cluster of slow-moving thunderstorms on Monday morning that moved across the southern lower peninsula, and you can see the greens there. That's the green is a lot of that's more than an inch, but we did have some areas in yellow and brown there that picked up several inches at my house in Hazlet. I got 4.21 inches, much of which fell in 2 hours between 4 and 6 a.m. It was a little bit, well, it was a surprise. But the intriguing thing was that with that much rain and that fast, one would typically expect to see a lot of standing water and issues with flooding. But given the dryness that preceded that over the last, and also, and that's for a couple reasons for that. But given the dryness that preceded that event, there was relatively little, unexpectedly small amounts of standing water. But we did see some areas, again, with very little precipitation, while others saw excessive rainfall. And on the far right-hand side here, this is the trend over the last month, the last 30 days here, and it does depict really well what we have seen for a few weeks. And that's that generally wetter than normal in northern and western parts of the state, and then drier as you go south, especially across the south central and southwestern lower. That's where we've had the least precip. But also note, we've talked about this several times, but because of the above normal temperatures, because of a lot of sunshine, and before now, relatively low humidities, we've had high evaporative demand. So our potential evapotranspiration rates have been significantly above average. All of that has collectively led to a landscape drying out more quickly than it typically does at this time of the year. Degree day totals here for the season are still, for most of the state, above normal, but they range the totals now. This looks at, these are corn degree days, so with the 86 and 50 degree Fahrenheit cutoffs, they range from about 400 units in the far north to a little over 800 along the southern border of the state. And again, relative to normal, that's the values up in the western and the central UP are pretty close to where climatology says they should be. But as you go south from that, you can see a fairly significant surplus of degree days, again, moving south into southern lower Michigan and then into the Ohio Valley. And that's been the pattern we've seen virtually all year. And a lot of it, again, due to the warmer than normal weather. So especially recently in those areas that have gotten water and very warm nighttime temperatures. Note that minimum temperatures over the last couple of days have been in the 70s. That's way up there. It's way above what it typically is. There has been an awful lot happening in terms of growth and development of our crops. Soil moisture, the top 3 feet here, this is looking at that in terms of a percentile historically. And so the blues are areas where we have above normal moisture for this time of the year, and then the browns and the tans are the opposite, where we have deficits. And you can see that certainly over the last few weeks that we have, with that rapid depletion of soil moisture, with the conditions I mentioned earlier, there are areas now in lower Michigan where the value for that top 3 feet, that's a large area of soil, but it's actually a little bit below normal. There's a couple of exceptions, including the area here locally where we had so much rain earlier this week. But in general, much of the state has dried off very, very quickly. The soils have dried out very, very quickly, given the warmer than normal temperatures and above normal PET values. Well, on the map here this morning, we've got a frontal boundary currently moving through the far southern part of the state. It is not a strong front, but There is some Canadian origin air, an air mass to our north up over Ontario, and some of that has already moved into the state. There is an area in the radar pic here. You can see a recent one area of showers and thunderstorms along that front or behind it. It's not moving anywhere very fast. There's also some scattered shower and thunderstorm activity that's moved across southern and eastern lower Michigan here during the last few hours. You can see that now here down moving into the thumb. So there's a lot still going on, but note that it's somewhat scattered in nature. And that's what we're going to see here for much of the next couple days. Virtually a continuing chance for showers and thunderstorms, especially during the afternoon hours. The other issue is it's really important to note here, and you can't see this, but there's a very, very real and distinct difference between the northern part of the state and the southern part of the state in terms of temperatures and where that front has been. It's actually right now, it's in the mid 40s in portions of western upper Michigan behind the front and again, in that Canadian air, but it's still in the low 70s down across the south, that steamy, sultry air mass from the subtropics that's still there, and it will stay there. So for the next couple of days through Saturday, we're going to be looking at a very, very, well, about the same thing each day for location, but distinctly different in terms of temperatures, much cooler, relatively cooler in the north, and still hot and humid in the far south. Now, because of clouds today, we will see our high temperatures across southern lower Michigan won't be quite as hot as they were yesterday, probably the mid to upper 80s most areas, and there will be a continuing, again, threat for showers and thunderstorms, especially during the afternoon and the evening hours when the instability in the atmosphere is the greatest. But on the right-hand side here, the backdrop here, these are forecast highs for today, and again, you can see a very, very real and large difference. High temperatures up north only expected in the low 70s. So gorgeous, gorgeous conditions up there, but still hot and humid in the far south, but a couple degrees cooler than yesterday. Same thing tomorrow, almost a carbon copy. More showers and thunderstorms possible in the late afternoon and evening. I'll also of note here on the lower left, we still have, because of that hot weather continuing across the southern part of the state and the combination of high dew points and high humidity, we've got heat index values expected into the 90s. And so there's still heat advisories, not quite as extensive as yesterday or the day before, but they're still there across the southern third. So be careful out there and keep an eye on, especially folks who do not have air conditioning. It's still going to be very, very uncomfortable. And the same will be the case tomorrow. And here's the weather map. It looks almost the same as the weather map this morning. Not much change at all. The green there across Michigan indicated, again, more scattered shower and thunderstorm activity. And then a warm front off to our south and west. That's really one of the next features in that area of low pressure out in the Great Plains. That moves slowly towards us here by Saturday. That's the next system in terms of aerial coverage. And we're looking here, northern Michigan, we're looking at least 50-50 odds over the next 24 to 48 hours. That's where we'll see the greatest coverage of precip, and less as you go south, but most areas 30 or 40% probability. So some areas may get some rain, and it actually might be heavy if you're under a thunderstorm. Other areas will remain dry. So not a widespread type of rainfall, but once we move into the weekend, this next weather system to our west coming in again during the day on Saturday, but especially overnight Saturday into Sunday, that one will probably have more widespread rainfall with it spreading from northwest to southeast across the state late Saturday and ending on Sunday. Now, after that, and Saturday probably will be another actually pretty hot day. We will see temperatures with behind that warm front and southern lower Michigan up into the 90s again for highs with high humidity, but that'll probably be the last day, at least for a little while, that we see those stressful kind of conditions, because on Sunday and in early next week, another cool front moves in, and it's not really well, it's certainly less humid air. But instead of seeing highs up in the upper 80s and low 90s, we will be back to, well, upper 70s north to low 80s, maybe some mid 80s in the south. But that's fairly close to where we should be climatologically this time of the year. Low temperatures here will be still much above normal in the south, in the 60s to near 70, but then cooling off by the end of the weekend into early next week. But the one thing, it will be drier. The early part of next week, and certainly noticeably less humid than it's been. So that is a change. But as we move beyond that, there are signs of an active weather pattern setting up once again. So after Saturday, Sunday, or early Sunday, the next chance for precipitation probably coming by the middle of next week, maybe on Wednesday or Thursday. And it looks like a fairly active type of weather pattern that we are in. In terms of totals here for the upcoming week, you can see a distinct north to south gradient of totals. Heaviest rain, the most frequent rains are expected in northern parts of the state, and then less as you go south. Less than half an inch is projected here over the southeastern lower to more than 2 inches in the north. So big differences depending on location. I think that's a fairly good bet. Much of this precipitation that you see here will be over the next 2 to 3 days, especially including that Saturday type time frame. Potential evapotranspiration rates, not quite as high as they were in the last week, but still above normal. Most daily totals here in the range of about 0.17 to 0.22 per day. So a little bit above normal, but so water needs for crops will still be elevated for this. And that's especially true here for the areas that miss precip over the next few days. But with the warm temperatures, we'll see elevated PET rates. Now, looking into the medium range, I mentioned an active weather patterns. Both the 6 to 10 day and the 8 to 14 day outlooks here are calling for somewhat of a return of a very active weather pattern across the U.S. You can see the projected jet stream flow here across North America. It's fairly west to east horizontal. That's important. However, note that there's a little bit of a ridging feature here over the middle and eastern parts of North America, and that likely will lead to a continuation of warmer than normal mean temperatures for the end of June, and then probably for the first week of July. That's what you can see in the upper right-hand side here. It also means probably, again, an active storm track through the Midwest, which means more frequent than normal chances for precipitation and above normal totals as well. So thinking back again about Jamie's comments about warmth and humidity, this is definitely the direction that our forecast is pointing us to. There are a couple of breaks in that again early next week, but in general, this is a warm and wet forecast for Michigan. So a lot of impacts depending on the crop, but expect continued rapid growth and development of most crops. One would have to assume that given this kind of a scenario. So summarizing again, more of the same, especially for the southern part of the state, but significantly cooler over the north, depending on location, the next couple days. And then that temporary break coming the end of the weekend and early next week, transitioning gradually then back to a warmer and wetter than type of normal weather pattern. And with that, I will wrap up here and introduce our next week's speaker for virtual breakfast. And we have lucky to have another visitor speaker here from Ridgetown and the University of Guelph, and that's Dr. Jocelyn Smith. And she's going to be with us next week to talk about corn borer resistance and management. So that's coming up a week from today on the 27th. And with that, I'm going to hand off to Phil to talk about RUP. Thanks.